Hello everyone, Prime here. Today we're going to be fulfilling a request that we got a good couple weeks ago now, more than a couple, but yes, going over the possibilities of God of War, but if it's set in Egypt, what the story could be, who the villains would be, stuff like that. So, starting things off, we have Ammit and the hearts. So, this creature or demon was known as the Devourer of Millions, said to sit beside the scales of Mayat, truth, and consume the hearts or souls of those who were proven unworthy. So in this way they would be getting a second death after their first death, because to even get to this stage they have to die. So, this second death would bring a ceaseless journey for the victim whose heart was eaten by Ammit, and she was the divine retribution of the gods because of this. So Ammit herself wasn't necessarily a god, but may have been considered a demon, with the head of a crocodile, body of a large cat, and the hind area of a hippo. She could also take a human appearance if she needed to be, or in some of the myths she had a human appearance, but was never worshipped herself, and acted as a bit of a strong reminder to the Egyptian people that the rules of Mayat were not to be broken. Sort of like how, the devil in a way acts as sort of the worst possible scenario that you could be in. You're going to hell and being eternally punished for Christians, or, the equivalent in other religions. And in God of War, she could be scorned or mistreated by the gods, because how God of War, the storylines, the myths usually get flipped on the head or changed in some significant way. So, yeah, the gods could mistreat Ammit and disrespect her because of the fact that she eats hearts, and that's nasty. A building resentment for the gods could be growing in Ammit's heart, say, but she would be powerless or unable to act on it, just in the moment of time, before Kratos and Atreus, say, get up to Egypt and start messing around. But seeing Kratos, she could see an opportunity to change things and get some revenge, or lash out at another god for whatever reason the plot might give. As far as the mythology itself goes, Egyptian mythology, there's not that much to say about Ammit, meaning that there's a lot that can be done to play around the demon, without upsetting the mythology, of course. And we're going to jump right back into Ammit's story in just a sec, but we're also going to mention the Book of Thoth, which was a powerful book that contained many spells for more or less anything that you might need, from talking with animals to understanding the words of gods and even restoring the dead. Now, hang on to that thought. The book was stowed away at the bottom of the Nile in the first myth surrounding it, and secured by hidden boxes protected by snakes. The first man to find the book from the Nile committed suicide not too long after having it, and he himself was a prince. The book was then buried in his tomb by his side. And the book was taken from the tomb many, many times. And of course, when the book is taken, the culprit, the person who took the book, may be chased by a particular goddess, who may be Bastet, but others have known to chase the thief. And more specifically, they may also have their loved ones die or disappear one by one until the artifact is eventually returned. Part of you might be thinking, well, if the book has the power to help you restore the dead, why would that necessarily be an issue? But usually that one can be a sticker which really gets people to return the book, so I guess it just works. Now, before we get into my story ideas and how some of these myths can play into the story, I'm just going to give you a couple of stories that I think could be cool to have as side quests. So there's a god in Egyptian mythology who is the god of destiny, and their name is Shay, and they have a really interesting sort of tale that they have with a prince. Now, it might be too overdone within the God of War universe to talk about destiny too much, because you already have the whole storyline with the fates back in the Greek side of things. So I don't know how much they'd want to mess around with destiny and fate, and those are sort of ideas in the story already, especially because we're going along with this prophecy thing with Norse mythology now. There's only so much you can use an idea before you overdo it, so maybe keeping this just as a side quest might be nice to see, but there you go. The story itself involves a prince who puts himself in many dangerous situations, but he essentially doesn't die in them, and he's on this quest, and throughout the quest there's several points at which he'd probably die, but the God of Destiny makes sure that he dies at the very specific point when his time comes, and the God of Destiny knows when he's going to die. But the prince doesn't, and isn't really aware of all of that, so yeah, he becomes quite famous and goes on this quest. It is quite interesting. There's also a story involving a pharaoh named Thutmose who receives a vision or a dream from some of the gods, and he is supposed to protect this large sphinx, which was part of a god or very important to one of the gods. And once he discovers this sphinx and does what the gods ask him to do, he becomes pharaoh, according to the myths. That could be something that could be spun around and played with as well. And then there was the first queen of Egypt, and her story, her name is Hatshepsut, something like that. So her story could also be an interesting one to include. But now we have the initial story here. And I've broken it down into its raw elements. So first off, we have Set or Horus, befriending or meeting or guiding Atreus in some way. And then, of course, training and mentoring Atreus at the start of the story, or perhaps before the start of the story. But specifically, the important thing that either Set or Horus will teach Atreus is teaching him how to read the Egyptian language and the hieroglyphs and all of that. So next off, we then have Atreus finding the Book of Thoth. This could take quite a bit of gameplay. Maybe this will be a few hours into the game, not too sure, but at some point he does find the Book of Thoth, and he brings it to his mentor, being, of course, Set or Horus. And then it turns out that this mentor is using Atreus to become more powerful. But of course, Atreus is a kid. He's a young guy at this point of the story, very easy to influence for these gods. So they, of course, take advantage of Atreus. And then because Atreus has taken this book, or because this book has been taken by either Kratos or Atreus, one of them eventually, through some method or another, loses their lives. Before this, perhaps the duo will face off against Bastet, or a goddess who is trying to reclaim the book, and who may give hints that, the book's cursed and they shouldn't play with this stuff, and then one of them dies. If Kratos dies, perhaps his heart is eaten by Ymit, or he joins Ymit's side. And of course, if Kratos' heart is eaten by Ymit, then I suppose you could consider it karma. He was kind of a douchebag, and the whole Greek storyline, right? So maybe that's a bit of karma there. Either Kratos is screwed, or Ymit signs up Kratos or Atreus, whoever dies. And then, whoever mentors Atreus defeats their arch nemesis. So, if Set mentors Atreus, then he defeats Horus, and if Horus mentors Atreus, then Horus becomes, the ruler. Whoever wins becomes the ruler of Egypt. So there's the tie-in with the main story from Egyptian mythology there. And then Faye and Kratos, and then either Faye or someone from Kratos' older life is revived, or attempted to be revived. So they're sort of brought back from the dead in a way. It's not done well. There's an issue, a kink, a significant issue in their revival. Perhaps they're brought back in such a way in which the way they're brought back isn't really living, or they're brought back in a monstrous state, or an incomplete way. And either way, it's a mess. So then someone has to put this right. Atreus at some point also learns the name of a god, the god that mentored him, or a god stronger than the god that mentored him, that can be used to sort of help Atreus out. And then Atreus or Kratos defeats either Set or Horus by the end of the story. And now, of course, there are some lingering issues there. If Atreus or Kratos ends up dying, do they remain separated? How is Egypt affected by all of these events and things like that? Not completely sure, but those are just some initial story ideas and things that I could thought that would be cool for a God of War set in Egypt. But let me know your thoughts. What do you think about this? These are good ideas? Do you have better ideas? Let me know in the comment section below. And of course, if you enjoy the video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. But till the next one, have a very good day. I've been Prime. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.